Hi, everyone. I'm Jackie Leventhal, and I'm the Chief Brand and Content Officer here at 6th and I. Whether you are here with us in person or watching virtually from home, thank you so much for being with us tonight and for your support of a nonprofit. By show of hands, is this your first time at 6th and I? Nearly everyone. Wow. Okay, well, I'll tell you a little history because you're new. This building dates back to 1908. It was a synagogue for 45 years and then home to an AME church for the next 50 years. When the church relocated and put this building up for sale in the early 2000s, the highest bid was from someone who wanted to turn it into a nightclub. But this sacred space was destined for something greater, and it was saved within 24 hours. For the past 19 years, 6th and I has served as a center for arts, entertainment, ideas, and Jewish life. Our aim is to inspire more meaningful and fulfilling lives through an unexpected mix of experiences that embrace the multifaceted identities of everyone we serve. For anyone who saw Kate Bowler speak here in 2021, you heard me share how years before, as a Jew sitting in the pew of a Presbyterian church in the suburbs of Virginia, I was listening to Kate speak, and I realized that this professor of American religious history at Duke Divinity School, this expert on the history of Christianity in America and on the prosperity gospel, is my rabbi. As an aside, Rabbi Aaron and Rabbi Nora on staff here are extraordinary people, and if you ever need a rabbi that's actually ordained, I highly recommend them. But back to my rabbi. Kate's spiritual wisdom, or her Torah, is in giving us the permission to feel human. In a culture that stresses best life now and anything is possible, Kate recognizes how stressful that can actually be and how unlikely of a reality it is. Have a Beautiful, Terrible Day is the book of spiritual reflections we're here to celebrate tonight. It stems from Kate's motto that life is so beautiful, life is so hard. And that's true for all of us. Some of you here got great news today. Others are holding fresh pain. What Kate drives home is that in lives that are inevitably a combination of highs and lows, we should be grateful for the time we get to spend in the mediocre middle, and that a good enough life is a great one to aspire to. The author Glennon Doyle has said that, quote, Kate Bowler is the only one we can trust to tell us the truth. She's done that in her best-selling memoirs, Everything Happens for a Reason, and No Cure for Being Human, and in the hilarious and heartbreaking stories shared on her podcast, Everything Happens. The exquisite truths in her books of devotionals and blessings had me tell my Jewish mother recently that when Kate Bowler says Jesus, I think I feel something. Yeah. Tonight, it went over pretty well, yeah. Tonight, Kate will be in conversation with the one and only Judy Woodruff, a senior correspondent and the former anchor and managing editor of the PBS NewsHour. In 2013, Judy and the late Gwen Ifill were named the first two women to co-anchor a national news broadcast. Judy's 5 decades of reporting have garnered numerous prestigious awards, including an Emmy Lifetime Achievement Award. She's also a graduate of Duke University, and I think we have a lot of Blue Devils in the room tonight. Thank you all again, both here and at home, for joining us. Please help me give a warm welcome to Kate Bowler and Judy Woodruff.
That's ridiculous. Aww.
Thank you.
Wow. I'm so happy. Judy, I was the most nervous about tonight because you are genuinely the coolest, and this is the loveliest, warmest room of my favorite people, so thank you.
Hey, I am just beyond thrilled. I am delighted to be here. Not just because you're a Blue Devil, although that has something to do with it, but just, I mean, look at this crowd. Look at this. What is it? I was told 700 people with
Look at them.
And hundreds more are watching, streaming online, whatever devices they're watching.
Yeah.
You have an amazing following.
Well, if you don't, especially weirdly, DC happens to be home to the people who were the most supportive to me when I was going through my very first diagnostic moment. And so many people here who are really part of these very emotionally expensive professions where they choose to love other people and also to love institutions in a time of real fragility. Like, this is a weirdly rare group of do-gooders. And so it is kind of bonus.
Well, I had several friends email me in the last few days saying they were planning to be here. So this room is full of people who are excited to see you. So your career is already extraordinary. Associate professor in the Divinity School at Duke University, the best-selling author, New York Times best-selling author. This is your 8th book. Have a beautiful, terrible day.
I like to make it hard for marketing. They're like, what's it about? I'm like, it's kind of a bummer, guys. It's going to feel weird on a shelf.
So let's get right to the point. Is today beautiful or terrible?
Oh, this day is surreal. And I think that's what is so strange about the roller coaster feeling is in a moment like this where you get the weird dignity of seeing anything come to fruition, and you feel that bubbly, effervescent magic that happens when you get a sacred moment of vocation, and you get to do it with people you love. It just makes it a spectacular day.
Was this, what was it inside? You've already given us some extraordinary thoughts, guidance from Kate Bowler. What was it in particular that came up inside of you that made you want to write this book and put this set of messages out?
Well, last year I got stuck in a loop. I don't know if other people like to just have multiple problems, but I like to know what it's like if one problem just kind of takes me down. And so I got neck pain, and if you're waiting for that story to become interesting, it won't. I got neck pain, and that became more pain and became more pain, and then before I knew it, I was revolving around this like a human drill, and I couldn't get out. And I know other people have other loops they get stuck in, if it's a relationship that just won't change, or it's a kid that you always have hopes for and it never quite ends up launching, or the fragility of parents. But we can feel it when we're trying to tell our story to somebody else, and we can see the gentle fatigue in their eyes because we've told it 200 times now. But there's like a weird despair when your problem is both unbelievably urgent and unbearably boring. And that's the kind of year I was having.
But you do write in the preface. In fact, you have a number of important things to say throughout the book, but in the preface in particular, you talk about these are stressful times. Yeah. These are anxious times in particular. Yes, some of us are going through health crises, and I want to ask you about that in just a moment. Yeah. But you mentioned headlines and bad news. Yeah. I mean, how does that feel to you?
Yeah. Because I'm always loath as a historian to say, like, this time is the most blah, blah. But we do have a certain anxious fragility about us. And we run into somebody and they say, how are you? Or we read the headlines and we automatically nod when we read the worst or hear the worst thing. And we think, yes, of course that would happen. And we find, I think, it difficult to explain why it feels like the volume is turned up extra high on that feeling of almost embedded fear. Yeah. And we sort of wish we could reach out and be like, but you feel it too, and you feel it, don't you? And for some of us, it's that the volume of our lives are very loud. But I think on top of that, I mean, I once did a very funny course. It was 1999, and this very nice Old Testament professor let us do a course on the apocalypse because we were worried about Y2K and our Yahoo address is not working anymore. And so we like searched through time for the feeling, and what that strangely horrifying, almost delicious and awful feeling where we think we know what's going to happen and that it will break everything. And the thought becomes sort of like the way we think about single-use plastics, which is that we have no idea. We have no idea how that's going to work. But every thought becomes too painful almost, and we drop it the second that we hear it. And I think we feel so genuinely worried about these next few years together and in our own lives that we wonder, how will we live these terrible days?
I want to quote, there are so many things to quote. And I actually told Kate a few minutes ago, I said, I'd love for you to just read the book to everybody. They'd be riveted.
Thank you for coming. It's like the audiobook, but longer, and there will be no bathroom breaks.
No, but all right, I'm going to read a couple things, but this is what I want to read. You said, we are no longer able to be carried along by the momentum of ordinary days unfolding into other ordinary days. Instead, we are lifted and carried by currents larger than we are, taking us further and faster than we wanted to go. There are highs and lows, soaring views, and stomach-clenching drops. Talk about what those currents are that you're feeling right now.
Well, I guess one thing that immediately comes to mind is the institutional fragility that we feel. Is most of us participate in structures that felt more solid than they do now. I mean, I work at a Divinity School that serves the institutional church, and so I meet with pastors all the time whose very lives have constantly been breaking as they see their congregations breaking over and over and over again in these culture wars, and they think, wow, there used to be these ways that we knew how to glue people together, and now everywhere we look, it seems that somebody's job feels harder than it did before. And that all these processes that we thought we would participate in, from confidence in voting to healthcare to, just name any sector. Every time I meet a lovely person who spent a really long time getting a hard job, and now they've just got this soul weariness about them, which is like, why is this harder for this long? And I think we're feeling the weight of these times when we thought that kind of New Year's bump was going to get us back to a sort of soaring feeling of invincibility, but like, what was that feeling?
Well, we are in a moment when technology is speeding faster than the speed of light. Every day there's a new device, there's a new podcast, there's a new something that we're supposed to understand. And our lives are changed, and not just in the way we read our email or our text messages and use our phone. Yeah. It speeds everything up.
Yes.
How much of that do you think complicates what we're trying to do every day as human beings?
Oh, yeah. It's weird because when I look back, because I spent my 20s interviewing televangelists, as we do when we're young, so very young. And I just have so much Little House on the Prairie up here. So like with a clipboard and attentive expression, I was learning mostly about how people had shaped stories. I mean, the very first reality programs really around religious families. And what they were learning to do in real time was try to make the best parts of what they hoped for into a kind of daily show and tell. And I had no idea that what I was watching was just going to become Instagram. That all of us would become televangelists of good, better, best. And that we would know our angles. And I think there's a sadness with the way that we have found ourselves being squeezed into this weird market pace in which it feels like we've got a daily Christmas card to let everyone know.
Yeah.
And I think it's ground into us that we're supposed to prove our worth. And I think it just accidentally tells us a partial truth over and over again, that people should be able to see our best hopes. And we can't live up under it.
And that leaves us in we start the day
Yes.
behind.
Yes.
Don't we?
That's a perfect description. Yeah.
We start the day, especially a lot of us who live in Washington, who have lists of things that we need to get done,
Yes.
and we're determined we're going to get them done.
Yeah.
But the reality is that
Yeah.
it's a lot harder than that. And you do such an incredible job in this book of addressing that. I mean, there are so many messages in here for those days when we feel overwhelmed.
Yeah. Yeah. We start the day behind is so wise, Judy. That's exactly right. Because the progress narrative, it's almost like we like woke up in a fugue state and we're like, oh, am I doing this? I think that and especially for women, I would say that our perfectibility paradigm has really hammered into us that we were supposed to be different by now. And and I would venture to say it's the end of January and 90% of us have not conquered our New Year's resolutions according to most statistics. So, yeah, it's hard to question the value that like the sense of worth that feels like it's there for us if we would just reach for it.
So much of this book is about, and you set the tone at the beginning, and then you return to it, our fragility. You talk about our precarity, and you talk about that as a Christian, or the precariousness of life, of what we're trying to do. But Kate, talk about why. Was it the line? I think I wrote this down about. You said the most basic aspect of our humanity is that we are united by our fragility, and yet we're all trying to be really strong and tough to get through it all.
Yeah.
So, how do you square that?
Yeah. Well, I guess I can hear it too sometimes in the way that so much of the narratives we have about befores and afters play out, because almost all of us have had some kind of before and after in our life where some difficult thing kind of pulled the thread of a sweater and then we're just not wearing a sweater anymore. Like it's over. And the narrative of after is we just need to get back to before. Like let me just undo the damage. Let me get back to certainty. Let me get back to that durable feeling that we had where we were some kind of whole. And I guess because life stayed harder for longer than I thought it would, then I realized I would need to try to grapple with different language that would help account for why I could just never get back, and that maybe it wasn't quite so terrible. And there was this really funny image I had about, so I'm Mennonite, and we are constantly building things. And so we bought this really garbage bungalow in Durham, North Carolina. And when we bought it, it had like an Elvis tribute room, and like it had mini golf carpet, which I really love for just a quick game. And most of our 20s was like rehabbing and discovering the cockroach nest of every new cranny. And it was part of my feeling that everything was amounting to something, like every paint job, every like young marriage, let's get at it. But I was building a life. And it felt really reasonable. Like when I first moved in, we couldn't afford anything. And if anything broke, it would have just leveled our entire situation. And and then when tragedy came calling, I guess that was the first time I realized that all of it, lovely as it was really bad math. That like, if I thought about everything I had bought, from the dishwasher and the 10-year warranty that I'd had to talk about with my mother-in-law for a really long time, and the furnace that was just about to give out all the time, that if I added up every part of the house, and the shingles that we had just had them have like all kinds of help, like getting exactly aligned, that all of it would have to magically continue to work forever in order for me to be able to afford my life. And then when everybody in this unbelievably embarrassing way had to bring us food and help us pay for what it would take to fly out of state for medical care, and on and on and on, I guess I just realized that it was a kind of magical thinking that I'd seen a lot in the prosperity gospel, where someone's life would break and they would be so quick with, well, your dishwasher broke, I guess you didn't tithe, or your marriage failed, I suppose you're not praying enough. But that we create these causal connections constantly, we re-enchant a world to try to make it controllable again. And haven't I always sort of participated in this process of imagining that every single thing I was doing was supposed to be great math?
But you somehow, of course, have gotten through, that was what, about 9, 10 years ago when you were first diagnosed. Is that right?
Was it? Weird. Was it? Wow, time is so weird. 8, 7, and then 4 years of high drama, and then maybe like 2 years of yellow zone from Smokey the Bear. And then now I'm kind of just stayed in yellow. But it was the feeling that like, well, maybe if it's never just green zone forever, this is unfortunately Smokey the Bear hands forever. But that precarity would help acknowledge the fact that we are so often moving back and forth in our life in seasons where sometimes it's like high red alert drama and sometimes everything is fine. But in this, how do we account for the fact that all of it was not likely due to our plucky effort and our can-do spirit?
But I mean, if people know that you've done just a remarkable thing in that not only working your way through this diagnosis to a much better place today, but still going through complications. You were just telling me in the green room that as you were writing this book, you were experiencing terrible pain every day, but you've managed to find your way through it.
Yeah.
How much can you share of how you did that? Because whatever people here may have experienced in their own lives,
Sure.
I think we all at some point will have a glimpse of that.
Yeah, I was a little bit horrified to have a new and exciting problem, but it was so bad that I really only had 1 hour every day where I could think, because everything hurt, like leaning, standing, laughing, looking, listening, everything hurt. And by about 1 p.m., you could kind of see it on me that I couldn't quite hear you anymore, and that all the sort of veneer of cheerfulness was wearing off, and then you just kind of see all the rough edges. And then by 2 or 3 p.m., I was lying in a bathtub, trying to just get the weight off of my joints, crying into my hands, thinking that this was just another version of everything being over. And that's like that weird slippage of the mind where all despair feels the same. And so to be honest, I think this is why I'm so obsessed with that very small space we have in any day, in any week, in any year, in any life, to have a tiny opportunity to try. And the language of like limited agency is very appealing to me. And I think that's why I'm so obsessed with self-help and everything is possibilism, is in my own life, I've sometimes just had my days squeezed down to a small bit. And in that version, everything hurt. And so I had maxed out all my drugs, and I didn't want to go back on narcotics full time because they make me extremely itchy and irritable. I'd run out of options, and you go see your general practitioner named Kathy for a very reasonable $20 copay, and now you're onto those $55 copay appointments with Brad, who only has availability in 2 months, and you're on a cycle of seeing Brads forever. So I just tried a little experiment. My joints are so hypermobile, but I was in so much pain. I thought, well, what if I tried a super aggressive strength building plus physical therapy plus massage on a 3-day cycle. And I'd spent most of my days doing some kind of thing like that. And I was like, just let it. You're going to be in so much pain. You're going to be in pain anyway. Just try it for 4 months and see if it works. And so there's a lot of just light car crying. But I slowly built up more strength so that I could, and I found some better healthcare providers that helped me make some tweaks, and I slowly unspun this awful.
Amazing.
But the trying is what, like, you can see the crazy in my eyes, you know, but like, the trying is what I feel the weight of, is within a day, you just get a second where you could just try. And most of us don't even get that feeling because no one's there to help us figure out how to try. So if I can ever climb out of something, I feel just full.
Well, to look at you, you look fabulous, incredible. You would never know that you went through this war, this battle. Can we just give Kate applause for what she's done?
So kind. Thanks.
I mean, I'm in awe. That doesn't begin to do justice. There are lessons in this book for every kind of day, the best kind of day, the worst kind of day. And I wanted to, as I said earlier, I would have been happy to just have you read the whole thing. But before I do, talk for just a moment about what the difference is between the self-help part of what you are so good at and Christian self-help. Because every message in here is accompanied by verse from the Bible,
Sure.
New Testament, Old Testament.
Yeah. Well,
what's the difference?
According to Target, there is no difference. It's all the same. And it's so funny. They look almost identical if you are looking at any set of paperbacks. And that's because like the American obsession with self-help really took off in the late 19th century as part of the American experience of cities, is people in close proximity, especially people experiencing dramatic inequality, are going to want explanations for why some people seem to have all the luck. Why do some people climb to the very top and other people fall all the way down? And so American self-help goes into the very first dime novels and then Good Housekeeping magazine, and it becomes the accessible, democratized language of you can do it. But it very quickly becomes not just a kind of pragmatic language of like, here's like life hacks, quick tips and tricks. It's actually mostly resting on a set of metaphysical assumptions, which is to say beliefs about the power of the mind, that all good things, like boomerangs, like you throw it out and all good things will come back to you. And then conversely, if you say or do the wrong thing, then all bad things will kind of come back to you. And so self-help really doesn't ever stay secular. It's almost always a set of religious beliefs. And so that's why Christian self-help kind of was weavy hands in with it from the very beginning and began to look and sound quite similar. The problem is that, I mean, the Judeo-Christian tradition does already have a rich language for a similar thing. If they're both trying to track progress, well, people who are trying to improve in the life of faith also want a language of progress. But we are kind of hoping that our language looks a little bit more, not just like progress, like hopefully we are changing, but to what? And so the language that's so lovely is that of like sanctification. How do we somehow not just change and become better, capitalist citizens, but maybe like grow in our virtues? How do we become more loving, more joyful, more peaceful, more? But the problem is that the second you get like the image of the ladder, then you start playing show and tell, like, look at me improving. And so the very first pictures of a praying woman on Instagram was born. And so it began. But the problem is that the lovelier version is so close to the exhausting hustle monster version. And so it really takes wisdom, like in my own dumb heart all the time, to kind of pull apart what is this exhausting, individualistic language of always do better, and what is sanctification?
And we're in a synagogue, as we were reminded earlier. How do you think about that, about Christianity and all the other religions on the planet?
Yeah.
And how what you're writing and what your work is and what you're thinking, how it fits into that?
Well, I guess I'm hoping that, I spend most of my historical brain studying versions of self-help that I would say very generously are heresy. And what I mean by heresy is not quite so mean, but I guess I just think of it as like that heresy is beautiful things that don't transform us. And I want a dragon style, put them in my pocket all the time too. But so I guess that's partly, and why in pain I kind of turned more to spiritual practices than I have, at least in any writing or thinking before, was because I desperately needed it to figure out like a little bit of wisdom and support for the experience that I was having in my painful day. And so my belief then is, God, you love the brokenhearted. You love all those who desperately want to draw close to you. You love everyone who needs you. But trying to find the thing that's heresy, which sort of like if you flick it, it just sounds like plastic. And then the thing that where you flick it, if it rings, the ringing is the beauty of transcendence, in which something that is true about God somehow echoes in our own life.
Yeah.
And so I guess when I'm looking for virtues, I'm looking for the stuff that rings.
Clearly the messages here go to all of humanity. It's written for an American and a Canadian.
Thank you for your service,
audience.
Thank you. She listens to Canadian news every day, and I think it's just for me. She knew that out there, of the 33 million people, that I, her greatest fan, needed to know that.
Yeah, my husband, who's sitting there, knows that every night at 11 o'clock I'm listening to the CBC radio. Sorry. And Kate, the other thing you say, as I start to ask you to look at, to read some of this, is the roof always caves in. Yes. That's kind of depressing. Did you really have to write that?
I really like the idea that wouldn't it be nice if the next book it just said, that's kind of depressing, Judy Woodruff. I would like Judy if I could keep that. I lock that in my heart.
Well, let's get on an upward trajectory. The title of her first chapter, her first message, When Everything is Out of Control.
Yes. Like, on an up note.
So I want you to read. There was, you can see I've got about 85 Post-it notes in here, but look at that. Read some of that.
Sure. What's happening here? It's a fun little trust fall we're doing. There was this lovely professor at the Divinity School that I was his preceptor, David Steinmetz, and as he went blind, he had most of his lectures memorized. But sometimes he would point in a very thick medieval passage, he would just point at it, make me read it. Sometimes those passages were so weirdly sexy, and we both just kind of let it fall at the end, and we're like, and so it is written. So we're not really sure. Do you want the blessing part or the chatty chat part?
You pick.
All right. There's something people say when you're in a lot of pain or trouble or life is out of control. They say, all you can control is your reaction. And sure, that's often good advice. We can try to reduce the scale of our problem solving to a small, manageable step. But I don't want you to have to skip that first true thing you are allowed to say. I have lost control. This is happening to me. This blessing is for when you need to say, God, this is out of control. People keep telling me that I have control over this, but I really don't. I need help. All right. All you can change, they say, is you. You don't control anyone but yourself. All they can do, they say, is take a breath and consider your reaction to what is happening. Return to yourself. You are what is happening. What is happening is a landslide, God. The world melted before my eyes. It is the feeling of my feet going first, and then my back smack against the ground, and then the whooshing sound of the earth as it moves. It's the speed, God. Why didn't anyone tell me about the speed at which it goes? My horizon, my choices, my control before blink, blink. Someone with a calm voice is asking me about my reaction to a world now left behind. You are there, somewhere out there, though I can hardly feel it. Send an angel, send a fleet, send them now. So that's the sort of thing I do.
Yeah.
You guys, that's very nice.
I just thought it was totally appropriate that was the first one, when everything is...
Everyone's turning off their calm meditation app and being like, wait a minute, I am upset.
I mean, there are so many others that I identify with when it's not fair. It really...
Yeah. It's funny, because I think so much of it comes out of like a lovely attempting to be comforting thing. And then because I want the half step before that thing. And that one, I don't know.
All right, come on,
I remember there was something in there that I was like, oh yeah. In the midst of the worst things that have happened to me, I realized that no one was going to show up to apologize. People who have hurt us rarely apologize. Natural disasters and disease will almost never say they're sorry. And even if it felt silly to say, I want an apology for my cancer diagnosis, I really did. So if you need one too, here's a blessing for when life isn't fair. And for what it's worth, I'm really sorry that happened to you. You know, feelings. Actually, you know what happened, Judy? It was weird. I was walking in my neighborhood, listening to my sister talk about a problem. And I just want you to picture like freshly mown grass in a suburban, normal, idyllic setting. And then I felt this weird kind of rubber snap feeling on my ankle. And then I was a very attentive listener. And then I noticed that I was mildly limping. And then I noticed I was really limping. And then I was like, I was like, maybe wrap this up for a second. And I was like, hey, Amy, sorry. I think I got like a wasp or something like that. I got to figure this out. And so then I went into my house and I was like, hey, so it feels like there's just like some kind of weird ripply pain. And my husband took out the mirror and he was like, oh, that's a snake bite. And so I went to the hospital with so much chillness that I first went to urgent care. And those poor sweet women were like, get out of here, why are you here? And I was like, oh, right, not the right level of emergency. And then I went into the hospital, and the favorite part of going into the hospital was it's the first time I've ever, because you're allowed to yell, I've been poisoned, because you go to the front of the line. And I felt so, like, at ease because I'd been to that same emergency room for absolutely ridiculous situations. But this time I was like, guys, take your time. I'll just see how it goes. And then they measure it and they do this whole Sharpie thing. And then the snake bite guy comes out and his name is Dan. And like, that's his only job. And Dan is like, yeah, you've been poisoned and we'll need to do the envenomation process. But then they're looking through my chart, which is so long. And they look so stressed out. And I got to be like, you might know me from such things as... But what was kind of oddly beautiful was so they had to keep me in emergency because of the envenomation process, at which point I became a superhero. And then, but they don't normally keep people there, so they're not totally sure what to do with you, so that you kind of just sit in a corner, and if you're me, you're just like, hi, and like sharing stories. But it offered me this very weird redo for a place where I'd had this very traumatic experience of having a sudden diagnosis and and being absolutely terrified that that was kind of the end of everything. And so I had a long purgatory, and I had an overnight in which, they come check on you every few hours, and I was sitting in this dark room with all the beep beep of all the hospital equipment, and this lovely nurse, and I got to meet the guy who does all the rat experiments, which is the same floor, and but this lovely nurse came in, and I said, and she was going through my chart, and I just said, it feels strange to be in exactly the same place, like a full loop, but having such a different experience of my own participation, my own control in what's happening to me. I have to admit, it feels really kind of like an odd gift to be able to feel more like myself in a very surreal situation. And she said, and she was like, well, what happened before? And I was like, well, I came in here all the time, and you guys sent me home with Pepto-Bismol, and it turns out that I had stage 4 cancer. And this woman, she was like, look, I just lost my husband last month. And I was like, hon, why are you here? She was like just young. And she was like, but it's just because this place. And I was like, oh, right. This place, the urgency, it feels natural when you're experiencing such a terrible crisis. And I was like, so this is the place where life feels like the highs and lows are intuitive. And she said, she was just looking through all my stuff, and she said, I just want you to know that I know it doesn't mean anything from someone like me, but what they did to you was absolutely wrong, and I just want you to know on behalf of all of us, in her nursing, she's like, I just want you to know I'm really sorry. Wow. And I just thought it was kind of wild that sometimes you really want an apology, and sometimes the person that was never going to be the person that was supposed to give it to you does. But what a gift when someone can just hand it to you like a present. So I've just never gotten over how lovely it is the way we give our dignity back to one another. I think that's what that was. I tried to send her a thank you note, but it turns out there are 12 people who have her name. And I kept sending it to the wrong person. They're like, ma'am, this person seems really nice, but that is not me. And I was like, dang it. I never got to find her.
There were a number of chapters in here. I mean, again, I have a million questions for you that I think were especially written for Washington, for a terrible day. When you need a break, to stop trying to fix everything, when you need to forgive. I thought I was struck by that. When someone has done you harm, I mean, you take all the quieting an anxious mind. You have something here for us all. I do want to stop for just a moment on when you need to forgive, because there's a lot of hurt that goes around everywhere. In this city and everywhere else. How did you think about this? I don't know if you want to read from it or just reflect on it for just a second.
Well, I guess so often on the podcast, I'm listening to people who have got caught in the wheels of a system that was actually operating in the way that it was supposed to. And that to me is the definition of structural evil, in which everything goes on the way it was organized, and yet you see someone chewed through. And I found, because I'm part of the institutional church, and I see the inability then of people to get the language for that feeling of the apology that they truly deserve. And so, and yet we know that there's a kind of wholeness that comes from the peace of forgiveness. And so how do you talk to somebody in a way that doesn't make you feel like you've saddled them with the guilt of not having forgiven already? I found that always to be the most tender part of a conversation. Malcolm Gladwell, he said that one of the reasons that he believes in God is that when he sees somebody forgive somebody that they don't have to, that it's not expected, that it is a kind of miracle. And that the miracle, and I guess that's kind of how I like to think about forgiveness, is like, it feels like watching a baby being born. You know, something new is happening, and it's an undeserved gift. So I kind of wonder now what I said about that. Because I was just trying to figure out how to pray about the feeling of a miracle and asking for that kind of miracle. So I just said, I've come to see forgiveness as a rare and beautiful thing. It's the miracle we need every day. We can simply pray, Lord, protect me and change me all at once. You are making me a miracle. So it's a lot of just like, could something new grow here amidst the rot and ruin? Something that safeguards our hearts and risks them all at once. Restore us, renew us, begin where nothing grows.
Forgiveness is something we don't talk about. Right? My husband and I went to a play, a new film based on a play by Bill Bradley, of course, basketball player, former senator from New Jersey, who has wrote a play, acted in New York, and now it's going out on HBO. But there is a moment in it about forgiveness with one of the players. He played on the New York Knicks, which is when you were speaking about forgiveness and how it's very hard for many of us to address. And I'm just thinking back to that.
How did the play address it?
He talks very candidly about meeting up with another player, and I can't think of the player's name. My husband would know. Cassie Russell. Thank you. They were competitors for a position on the Knicks, and I'm not a basketball fan, so I can't tell you even what I think it was center. But
I like that two sports people are up here talking sports. Stay tuned for us and more sports.
I'm in trouble already on this.
I love it.
But they competed, and Bradley says in this program that he did on Broadway for a week, and now it's in film form, that he said decades and wondered if they could forgive each other, or if he could forgive. If he could express his forgiveness to Russell, and they bumped into each other in an event somewhere, and they had a conversation. They both forgave each other, and it was a very moving part of the thing.
That's so
anyway,
beautiful.
That's as much as I know about basketball.
You're like, and it was balls and nets. My best friend Chelsea and I always talk about the list. The list as being when you've been wronged, and like, let's say you're talking to someone that you're just getting to know, and you reference the other thing, you're like, well, it's just the first example. It's like this calcified thing, where like, well, let me tell you. And it's like this hardened narrative that just like sits in us. I feel more like I'm just describing kidney stones, but we talk a lot about the list because it's really hard to get things off the list. Especially with the people we love and with people with whom we continue to have a relationship and they don't address the list. And then so often people who've gone through something awful, the hard part too is it's not just this lovely, sweet story of how everyone gathered around you. There's a new freaking list of like all the people that weren't there, all the people whose help was underwhelming or punitive. And it's kind of painful that like tragedy is a bit of a snowball. And so one of my great hopes for my life is to try not to make the list of my 40s the same list as my 30s and 20s. And at least if I can't ever have nothing on the list, that it changes and my enemies grow anew. Just joking, but like I'm trying not to make it quite so calcified.
You and I were talking a little bit about this earlier, about and we touched on it here, about the country is going through a tough time right now. We are as divided, it feels like we're as divided in a personal way as we've ever been. Not just that we disagree, but we think really bad things about people we don't agree with. What thoughts do you have about that, about how we should all be, or some of us, thinking about people we have profound disagreements with politically, and not just about how big the budget should be and what to do about climate change, but thinking, okay, if they think that, then their values are not my values. They must be a bad person. How do you think about that?
It's so hard because it has like risen to a level of like palpable disgust, that there's so many things that then trigger the feeling of disgust in strangers, and it comes from such a desire to protect our own tender hearts from things we're genuinely afraid of. We are afraid, so of course we're more uncharitable, quick trigger. We're more. I guess the bit that feels really lovely about my job right now is I get to hear about the universalizing element of people's difficult times. And in pain, it is this it's just is O negative the universal blood? Yeah. I feel like suffering is this sort of O negative situation that it creates so much natural empathy if you could just see the facts of somebody's life without all of the bumper stickers.
Yeah.
And I find that if I can get to a place of, and it's really weird, but it is kind of it's one of my weird specific prayers where I'm like, God, show me the thing. Like, show me the thing that's the key. It's the key to empathy. Because if I see that one thing, it's going to be so much easier for me to forgive. Blah, 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 blah. But I do find it a little shocking that since people are in so much pain right now, that empathy feels wildly scarce.
And it's being felt in the church, in our faith experiences as well. Yeah. We'll see it play out in the months to come, but I think we may have pain to watch. Speaking of which.
And that's kind of, can I do your
I turn
endorsement
the
for your
page.
next book?
It just said,
and that's kind of depressing, Kate Bowler. We'll put on the Judy Woodruff story.
Okay. I'm reading you something for more love in your life. I love that for breakup, divorce, or heartbreak, for when you're holding on to bad habits. Make me a peacekeeper. Your best life now. There's so much.
Can't you see it? Just dressed like upholstery. Yeah.
But I here's one that stays with me. I mean, all of them are resonate with me. When you're awake in the night, when there's something that is worrying you, how do you think about that? And you quote my good friend and colleague at the NewsHour, David Brooks, in here.
Oh, yeah.
This is the...
You know, and can I just say, journalists, my great overwhelming love of journalists, your lives are very difficult. And you've been unbelievably kind to me I just see you as very tired prophets and truth tellers. This one was just weird. I don't actually think that I've told him about this. He was going to come tonight, but it was like, if you see columnist David Brooks around here somewhere, please let him know I spent the last few nights in a semi-sleep fugue state thinking about an article he wrote, and then combining his argument with an apocalyptic vision of zombies taking over an airport while I was waiting for a flight. It was terrifying and absurd and utterly normal for me. I waste my sleeping hours with an exciting combination of self-sabotage, annoyance, embarrassment, and fear. Isn't the untethered mind wonderful? I never realized how much the 2 p.m. self is different than the 2 a.m. self. Like, you see me at 2 p.m., I got it going on. I am I'm working that inbox like a getting things done montage from a 2000s time management strategy manual. 2 a.m., I am rehearsing every one of the painful things that I wish I could change. So this, I think this is like my 12th blessing for hey, sorry you're up again.
Yeah.
And they're all like that.
All right. So So we have some, I have a lot of questions I want to ask you. There are some wonderful questions that have come in. This comes to Kate from another Kate in Virginia.
Team Kate.
And she says, what is the best thing I can say to a dear friend who's going through cancer treatments right now?
Oh, and so many good friends here. That's so lovely. Because I love it when, kind of like in the vein of the I'm sorry, and you can hear the Canadianness of that, but it is sorry. But I love it when people say, I'm so sorry this is happening to you. Like, other people in the world, they're fine. You. And I love it when people find a way to talk about, like to compliment the lovely things about the friend that are still discoverable and good. Because so often you feel utterly eclipsed by the thing that you couldn't choose.
Yeah.
So just focusing on a quality that they have that they can still practice, like if they're creative and they can be creative in a small way, if they're loving and then just kind of like bubble wrapping them into acceptable levels of being loving. But it's always nice when someone says something kind that doesn't sound like a eulogy. I once got a full letter in the past tense from a very attractive person, which kind of made it more painful. I'm like, was I so nice? Oh,
You used to be really wonderful.
she was great.
Oh, golly.
Yeah.
All right. This is question 2. It includes a word that I normally wouldn't say on the
I'm
PBS
excited.
NewsHour.
Where are we going?
But here we are in a synagogue, so it's okay. This is from Lindsay, who's here tonight. You may or may not want to raise your hand, Lindsay. But in all seriousness, do you ever feel like it's hard to connect with people who have not had an awakening experience? Yeah. How do you relate to people who haven't been dealt a shit card?
That is a perfect image. Yeah. Yeah, and like in the middle of the terrible thing, there's a little bit of it's just a little bit of loneliness tinged with bitterness. And that's the very must be nice. Really happy for your family, must be nice. And then of course, like 2 minutes later, you realize that they've actually had this and this. And there are very few people who, I mean, and sometimes it happens in my own life where there's a season of just forgetfulness, wonderful forgetfulness, because things are going great. And if you're in a lovely season, like, bless you. That feeling of wind in your sails is a lovely and rare and precious thing. And just live in the glorious obliviousness of the beautiful gifts we get given. But if you are in the trenches and other people don't seem to be in the trenches, it's difficult to always feel like you're at war. I have to hope for a different kind of compassion from myself when I feel like I'm an alien, like I have a full citizenship to another kingdom and I am all on my own. But all on my own is a lie. And I have to get back there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we all kind of, or maybe I believe that in every life something goes wrong, something goes awry.
Except
but
one
you're right.
Trevor out there.
Some people seem to have long stretches.
Yeah, they're doing great.
You know, you mentioned loneliness, and there's someone here tonight who's done a lot of thinking.
He seems okay.
Yeah. Vivek Murthy, who is the Surgeon General of the United States, is in the audience.
If you're cool like that.
He's done some writing and talking and a lot of thinking and speaking about this sort of plague of loneliness in America right now. And I know the two of you connected. I think you said you had lunch with him today. Is that right? So, I mean, for people who are in that position right now who are, I don't know, not
Yeah.
feeling there's somebody out there who wants to listen to their story?
Yeah.
What's the message for them?
Well, because that's such a powerful thing that that he's doing is naming loneliness as something that it is not only kind of a source of private shame, the sort of public indictment on not having friends, but a social ill, and one that is so common that the Surgeon General decides to travel the country desperately listening in a lovely, soulful way to people's desire to be better connected. And I think that's part of I guess that's one of the primary themes of studying self-help is most of the solutions that we're sold only re-enhance this very aggressive individualism that tell us that we were supposed to have done it on our own. Yeah. And so to have someone just lovingly and gently name the very reason why we need to be rewoven into each other's lives, and that interdependence is necessary because we cannot possibly carry the weight of a human life alone, is I think why it feels like it's Smokey the Bear level urgent.
This is another question. This is from MK, who's here tonight. And MK asked, how do we share the beautiful, terrible days with our children? I want to be authentic. I want to protect. I know there isn't a magic formula, but I would love to hear how you navigate the beauty and terror of life as a parent.
Because that is one of the difficult parts about, we want to live into I hope, a more authentic vulnerability than our culture gives us scripts for. But as in our role as parents, we are also champions and protectors in which we're desperately trying to figure out like the expanding bubble of their awareness and then match it with their access to the world as it is. And I really like, psychologist Lisa D'Amour is so wonderful, and she has, I read her parenting book about teenagers, the emotional lives of teenagers, and she wrote in the first couple chapters that one of the great paranoias, she might not say paranoia, but I'm going to use a dramatic word, was that we're so obsessed with aggressive positivity with our kids. We think we have to make everything wonderful and describe everything as wonderful, that we're in fact not allowing them a normal range of human emotion anymore because we're so happy for them. And she says, mental health is not just sort of crowding everything over to the scripted joyful. It's having the appropriate emotion at the appropriate time. Yeah. And that sounded exactly like Beautiful Terrible. Like, if it is difficult, giving them more language to name the lower end of the emotional register. And then if it is wonderful, being able to help them get there in an attitude of like wonder and gratitude. And if we can help accompany kids, maybe it helps get us back more into a place where we've got that kind of emotional flexibility. And I hope honesty.
And your son is 10. Is that right?
He is in the piracy years. Oh my gosh. Why do they want to go to junkyards and find treasures? He has a metal detector. He's a hoarder, I guess is what I'm saying.
He's one of my people. I'm a hoarder.
It's like treasures, 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 treasures. I'll be over here. Yeah, it's, to be completely honest, I can't believe that he escaped the worst days of my life. And I feel so, like, when I see him capable of empathy, he's just so, with his big little fishy eyes, I feel like I'm seeing a kind of miracle that we both are still ourselves. So that was a gift that got given to us, and I'm, by the fact that other people carried us, so.
They're miracles.
Yeah.
We have a few minutes left, and I want to ask Kate, if you want to what you want to say to this wonderful crowd about the message that comes through in this book and how you're thinking about how we all tackle this time that we're living in right now.
Well, that's
So.
lovely. Well, I guess like the hope of maybe the hope of right now is not to go out into a scary world or year or life and say and yell at yourself, don't be afraid. I mean, it's perfectly realistic and reasonable to be able to name our fears. There's just that lovely Frederick Buechner, he's a theologian, he's just kind of a wonderful observer of everyday life. And there's that quote from him that says, this is the world, wonderful and terrible things will happen. Like, don't be afraid. And I was like, well, maybe be like a little bit afraid. But allowing ourselves to kind of try to set the dial of our fears so that they're not so loud that it crowds out our ability to notice, to be awake and aware, but also then to be able to adjust the dial on our hopes. That I have the great hope that God and love and other people are going to draw us into a more beautiful future, that we are capable of holding each other through difficult times, and that in the worst moments of our life, they are also not the final word on us. And I have been shocked by that information because despair feels like everything will always be the same forever, and fear can accidentally tell us that same story, but it is a lie. Beautiful things are also always there too. And without just being like, live in the present, be grateful, because that is genuinely not a solution. But it can be part of an awareness that fear will not be the end of us. It just has to be folded into a new way of being. I think it's just the only way I know how to live like this in the beautiful, terrible day.
Kate Bowler,
My darlings.
thank you very much.
You guys. Thank you.